So I will introduce myself briefly in the next few slides, but I wanted to sort of, for International Women's Day, sort of talk about a couple of things that you may feel or might relate to holding you possibly back, or you might feel that they are doing so. And what we're going to do is look at how we turn those actually into superpowers. So that might not make a lot of sense right now, but hopefully it will do by the end of the presentation. So next slide, please, Joe. Okay, so hopefully that intro made a little bit of sense of what we're going to chat about briefly today, but just a bit of background around me. My name's Sophia. I'm a mum to 3. I'm from Doncaster, born and bred. I'm a senior engineering manager at Sky. Myself and teams, we support the underlying services that underpin the Sky News and Sky Sports apps and websites. I'm a charity founder, so I do a lot of work, particularly for people from disadvantaged backgrounds, to help them get into work, education and training opportunities in my local area. So spend a lot of time working with the job centre and supporting people through that journey. And I do quite a few talks. You may have heard me before, various women in tech events, but also speak a lot about diabetes because I was born with it, young parents and mental health as well, because it's something that I found challenging throughout my life. And next slide, please. So a bit about my engineering career. Naturally, I was a bit of a nerd from even toddler sort of years. Always wanted to understand how things worked, particularly things with engines, which I know sounds a bit weird, but like, you know, trains, fire trucks, that sort of thing. Used to mess around with my parents' computer for hours and hours and hours. I think my family actually thought there was probably something a bit wrong with me, which is totally understandable. And then it kind of developed at around 10, got into gaming, more gaming sites, used a couple of markup languages, so did a bit of HTML and CSS, and then started building websites to sort of allow people the option to copy and paste and use my designs, essentially. So that's how it started. It then progressed into a bit more of a time-absorbing hobby, started doing websites for family and friends and that sort of thing, and it went from there. I've never really, or didn't at that time see it as a career opportunity or something that, you know, would bring me an income. It was just something I enjoyed doing and building on, really. I became a mum very young, in my teenage years, and this is Theo, my eldest to the right. He was 27 weeks when he was born, so he was a bit premature as well, so he missed or was a bit delayed, I guess, with his development milestones. But he's all good now. This is him doing his work experience in our Sky offices about 2 years ago. So yeah, he's all fit and healthy now. But at that time when he was a baby, sort of noticed that he was missing a lot of social interaction. Obviously not many people that I was aware of had children at such a young age as well. So I was looking at opportunities to sort of better both our lives, really, better myself and better what I could provide Theo with. So that was sort of the bit of the steer. So I went round with just CVs and handed them into anywhere I could physically get to, because I didn't drive at that point. And I ended up getting the opportunity to be a dental nurse, which was great as well, because the place next door was a creche, so it was perfect. I could pop in on my lunch and that sort of thing. Did that, completed my GNVQ, and went into that career a bit further. Got up to project management level, working within the industry. So it was quite an exciting career. But in the background, I'd always continued doing these ad hoc little websites and bits for various people. So next slide, please, Joe. I started soon realizing that the money I was making from ad hoc roles or little contracts, it was expanding. It was a lot more than I could earn in terms of dental nurse, and it also provided me with a bit of flexibility, even then, the ability to sort of work from the computer at home, not have to worry about childcare and that sort of thing. And I got a couple of really good permanent but short-term roles through that. It kind of got to a point where, as an ambitious individual, I was like, oh, kind of want to get into these bigger tech companies that I keep seeing, so the likes of Google and this sort of thing. And I was like, okay, what are the barriers for me to get there? And every job advert that I saw, it was like, you know, you need a degree in computer science or engineering and that sort of thing. So I was like, right, okay, I'm going to try and obtain that. So while I was pregnant with my third child, I went back and resat my A-levels at Doncaster College and started university just after he was born. So that was 2013, 2014 now, for software engineering at Sheffield Hallam University. Alongside having the 3 children and working full time. So it was definitely a challenging time, but I enjoyed it nonetheless. And then I've been in corporate life ever since that period. So ever since about 2016, where I met Chris at Sky Betting and Gaming. So next slide, please, Joe. I just wanted to mention a couple of the people as well that sort of helped me in my career. I think without them, I would not be where I am today. I've been really lucky. I've had so much support, and so many people have opened doors for me or given me the most incredible advice, particularly at my time at Sky Bet. The 2 individuals here that are in the headshot more focus photo. So we've got Johnny in the bottom corner. He's my colleague. He's the other senior engineering manager for the department, and we've also got Tom up in the top corner, and he's our head of tech. So I'm very lucky. I've got a very supportive group of people around me. There's also a lot of internal, external networks that I'm a part of, and mentorship as well. So that's just a bit of background around myself. Next slide, please, Joe. So what this presentation is mainly going to be about, because I don't like just sitting and talking about myself, I'm happy to answer questions, but I wanted to go a bit more into some of the struggles that I've had and how we need to revisit sort of how you might see them and see them more as a positive. So it's called What's Your Superpower? It's trying to understand, similar to like a product or what you see on the likes of Dragon's Den and that sort of thing, what's your unique selling point as an individual? And you can actually use these things that you see as disadvantages as these selling points. So next slide, please, Joe. So the first sort of superpower that we've got that we're going to briefly talk about is imposter syndrome. And what imposter syndrome is it's a psychological occurrence in which people doubt their skills, talents, or accomplishments, and they have a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as frauds. I know a lot of people that have also had these thoughts and feelings, and particularly I think when you're a woman within tech, it can be quite challenging, and I think we're more susceptible individuals that are of minoritized groups to sometimes feel like this and sometimes feel this sort of way. But for the next slide, sorry, Joe. So that's the negative and the concept that we think, but actually when you look at that, that also brings a lot of advantages to you as an individual as well. And what I mean by that is some of the advantages are you tend to, if you have imposter syndrome or you experience it, you will tend to be more open-minded. You'll tend to be more humble when it comes to leadership. You won't be this I am the best and no one knows more than me. You'll be more open-minded to opinions and be able to evaluate things more fairly. You'll have an increased sense of empathy and compassion to others because you'll be experiencing those yourself. You'll tend to have a more ambitious work ethic. Obviously, we want to create those boundaries. We don't want to be working all the time or that sort of thing, but there are elements of that that are actually really positive. Being ambitious is most of the time a good thing. And then we've got increased awareness as well. And if we just move on to the next slide, I want to just give you 2 examples of individuals that you may have come across. So women, 2 quite well-known actresses that have also spoke quite openly about experiencing imposter syndrome. So Michelle Keegan, she's spoken recently on a podcast with Fern Cotton around how she's just constantly waiting for someone to sort of like catch her out. She doesn't see herself as anyone that's actually talented, despite being one of the most talented and beautiful individuals that I think I've ever come across. She doesn't see herself, she's literally waiting every moment for someone to sort of catch her in the act. And the same with Margaret Robbie. She's been going to over 10 years of red carpet events, and she's still all the time, she's waiting for someone to sort of notice that she's here, sort of like she's a fraudster, she's this. So I want to use this example to sort of generalize that imposter syndrome, it impacts so many people on such a scale of things that it's actually quite a normal feeling to have. The next superpower that I briefly want to speak about was being a parent or carer. It's quite upsetting that I think a lot of people see it as a major disadvantage. So one of the stats that I pulled out yesterday for this presentation was 69% of parents, they don't put the parental leave periods on CVs. And I think that's quite upsetting. So if we move on to the next one, I think there's almost a stigma or a sense of concern if you disclose that you're a parent or carer. But some of at least from my experience, some of the best skills that now at department manager level, some of the best skills that I've obtained is through parenting, and particularly parenting multiple children. So in terms of, organisation, I very rarely get all three children at the various places with everything that they need. One's got cooking, one's got drama, one's got this, but we do try our best, and that's definitely a skill I've picked up. Thinking on your feet, you can prepare to fail, but the likelihood is something's always going to happen that will need you to think immediately. Time management is a given, budgeting is given, and efficiency. These are all really good and important skills that we shouldn't be ashamed of. We should actually advertise these a lot more. I think people underestimate themselves when they're a parent or a carer, and they need to be more open about the things that they've learned and experienced. There's very limited roles I find out there that are at the level of what you will experience as a parent or a carer, and you need to push on those a lot more. So if we go on the next slide, there's two examples again of individuals that also have this superpower. So you've got Tara Henson there, a quite well-known actress of the US. She was one of the stars in the Hidden Figures movie. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but she famously was a single mother, quite young. She graduated with a child on her hip. She had very limited support and network. She was told by many people, you need a stable career and job and forget all these dreams, and she ignored them. She went to California. She was auditioning with her son on her lap, and I think that's quite inspirational given to where she's got to now. And you've got Kelly Girardi here, who's an astronaut, and she was one of the first women to actually first 100 women to actually make it into space, who is also a parent. So I hope they're good examples as well. The next superpower we've got is health. A lot of people also see this as a negative, whether it's a physical or mental disability you may feel that you have. 1 in 5 express concerns that the disability might impact on their career opportunities, and 2 in 5 don't even really want to disclose it if it's a less visible one. So for example, diabetes, it may not be as visible to most people. You may feel like you don't want to disclose it. I know I've felt like that a couple of times, probably unnecessarily, but I have experienced that. And we want to sort of reframe that as well. So if we go on to the next slide, having something like a physical or a mental disadvantage, so to speak, or you see it as a disadvantage, can actually bring major advantages as well. One of the main things that we're doing at Sky at the moment with our apps and our websites and things like that is trying to make them as accessible as possible. And if you can provide a different mindset to what you see as a standard person, it's incredible what you can offer and what that can mean for many other people. Because naturally, for example, someone that's I'll just use me as an example, non-diabetic might not understand your point of view for a given option, and it's the same with all sorts of things. You can expand that how you will, not just within the program or the product, or making things more accessible in terms of apps and websites, but also where you work. Is it accessible? Is it open to everyone? Can everyone get into work and that sort of thing? So that can span all sorts. You're also likely to have more empathy for other individuals. You bring a fresh mindset, as we briefly touched on just then, a completely fresh approach to different ideas, and that's always a positive thing. In most occasions, that is a massively positive thing. More open-minded and new networks as well. So 2 examples for this superpower. We've got on the next slide. We've got Christina Applegate, who is another American actress. She's suffered quite a lengthy health battle with breast cancer, and then also multiple sclerosis as well. Fantastic individual if you want to look her up. And also Rosie Jones, who's a UK comedian who has cerebral palsy. And she's never really let it hold her back. She's kept going. She always says if you want something badly enough, she will make it work. But she says her biggest disability is being misfit, which, yeah, I can absolutely see that. And then the final sort of superpower that I wanted to go through was age. So this stat's about maybe in elder years, but from my perspective, people think I look a lot younger than I actually am. So I guess that's a positive thing. After 3 kids and stuff, I would take that as a compliment. But when you sometimes walk into meetings, and this has happened to me previously, and people look and they'll see like you're a line manager or you're this, they're like, you can see that sometimes there's an assumption there. And now with my experience, I kind of like to play with people a little bit. I'll start by saying, oh yeah, and I've got a child. he's 10. And then they'll go, oh, you don't look old enough to have like a 10-year-old. And I say, yep. And I've got a daughter that's 15. And then they'll be like, you can see their face sort of change. And then my favorite one is always, and my eldest is 17. It's quite funny really. But anyway, yeah, there seems to be a bit of a stigma or thought around the age as well. And a lot of people, there's a stat here, 14% of people would believe they'd be turned down for a job due to their age. So that's nearly 1 in 5 have also chosen not to disclose their age in job applications, in concern about bias and things like that. So that's the disadvantage point of view, whichever side of the age spectrum you look at. But if we look at the positives on the next slide, there are so many different perspectives and things that age and experience can bring. The other big advantage that I've found, particularly with growing, so if you've got an individual, so in terms of titles, like I don't really believe in structure to a degree, it's more of a flat structure approach that I like to promote. But if you've got an individual that's, say, got 20 years experience, they're a principal engineer against a graduate who's fresh out of university, it doesn't mean that you can't challenge the other individual. If you're in a workshop or whatever else, every single person will have something to bring. And I think that's one of the things during my career, that most people seem to be absolutely petrified to challenge people. And it's just not the case. Everyone can learn something. We've all got different experiences, whether it's previous careers, you've been a parent or whatever else. Everyone can bring value or a fresh mindset to something. So I try and eradicate that where possible. And then if we move on to the next slide, we've got 2 examples of individuals have the age power. So Judge Judy, I don't know if many people know of her. She has a TV show. But she was actually a stay-at-home mum till her mid-30s. Sorry, bear with me. Till her mid-30s, and then she didn't get her actual big break until she was 53 years old, and that's for the show that you may have come across called Judge Judy. She says this famous quote, which I know has gone quite viral over social media and things like that, and she says, if you didn't make it in your 20s, you can make it in your 30s. If you didn't make it in your 30s, you can make it in your 40s. If you didn't make it in your 40s, you can make it in your 50s. If you didn't make it in your 50s, you can make it in your 60s, and so on and so on and so on. And she's absolutely right. You should never let the sort of mental idea of age stop you from doing whatever you want to do. Age is just a number. And another more famous probably example here is Oprah Winfrey. She didn't get her first sort of career break until she was 33. So yeah, I just wanted to provide them as examples. And then the second to final slide, just as key takeaways really, I just want to reiterate that everyone's limitless. Your unique experiences are never something that you should be ashamed of. It makes you who you are. That is your unique selling point, and that's what you should always push. You should be proud of who you are. Like I've been very fortunate to get a good group of people around you, whether that's via network, mentorship, externally or internally. Get the right-minded thinking people around you, and you'll go really, really far. And yeah, help lead the next generation, particularly of women in tech.